I was one of those people that escaped Vietnam on the day Saigon fell. So it was the very last day. It was April 30th. And I remember being um, in my house in the basement because my dad told me to go in the basement with my grandmother, and looking out at the window, we would see like just flashes of light. And it's like thunder. And they hear like sounds of distant drums. And of course, those were explosions in the horizon as the communists were coming into Saigon, invading our capital city. My father had gone to the presidential palace to help coordinate a counterattack to help fend off some of the invaders and to buy some time for more people to escape. In the morning, he came pick me up, and the airport had already been captured, so we couldn't take a plane out. We had to go to the coast and try to find one of the last few boats to get out of the country. And when we went to the coast, we found a small boat. It was like one of those PT boats, from from the war. And those boats were made for 16 people, but 200 people got on the boat. So we got on the boat and we just went head out to the ocean. We had no plan. We just had to escape for our lives. And then we had no water, no food. 3 days later, we totally exhausted with our water, our food, ran out of fuel. So we were just stranded out in the ocean, in the Pacific Ocean. We had sent out SOS messages throughout the last few days, and we didn't know if anybody heard it. So I think we were at the end of our rope. These 3 days, water, you're pretty much at the end. And I remember my lips were so chapped. And these are things my dad had told me, because I was only pretty much a 4 or 5-year-old toddler at that time, so I don't remember everything. I remember some of the key events, but my dad told me that my lips were bleeding, they're chapped, and I kept on asking why I couldn't drink the water that's all around us, the ocean water. And he said, you can't, because it's just too salty. Luckily, on the third day, we were rescued by an American destroyer. And they actually had captured our SOS message, or intercepted our SOS message, and found us, rescued us, took us to Guam. And there we stayed in that refugee camp for months until we were accepted in the U.S. So that's my journey as a refugee, and my first experience of running into the U.S. military. It was very positive, and then from that experience, I felt an obligation to pay back this country by serving. So after growing up here in the United States and going to just learn about history and learning about the sacrifices that American women and men, service members, fought for our country, for our freedoms. I served right after high school. I went and joined the Army. I've never been back to Vietnam. My father never wanted to go back because it was a life that he worked so hard to build, and then just in one day we lost everything. I remember his story when he was growing up. He was growing up extremely poor, and he luckily, because of his grades, got him into boarding school, but they couldn't afford books. So he made a deal with his classmates that he would help them with their school if they would allow him to borrow their books. And at night, when all the lights were out in the boarding school, he would go to the outhouse, because that was the only place that had a light. And these are stories he told me as I grew up, that he had a handkerchief on his nose because it smelled, and he would study all night in the outhouse, and then just ace the test. He became a colonel in the South Vietnamese Army, a very popular colonel, did great things for the country. Also went to cross-train in the United States, went to the military academy, the Command General Staff College in the United States, one of the few Vietnamese soldiers that got to go, and represented the country very well. So those are things that I have to look up to and try to emulate. That's my history. That's my history with my father, and that was the reason why we never came back to Vietnam, is because it just reminded him of all the things that he lost, that he worked so hard for. So America's our country. We see ourselves as Americans, fully. Growing up in the States in the 70s, being Vietnamese American wasn't easy. Kids are going to be the kids. They're going to find ways to make fun of you, regardless of where you come from, who you pray to, who you believe, who you voted for, who you love. I was different. Got bullied, but it helped me grow, helped me become stronger, and it was one of the decisions that helped drive me to become a soldier, to help defend those who can't defend themselves. So that's my history of growing up in the United States. Another fond memory here in Houston is just the immense amount of love that my father gave to me. He was it was just me and him. So he was played a role with my father and my mother. And I think one of the important key lessons he taught me was that even if you're poor, you don't have to look like you're poor. So after trying to get back his job at Exxon in Houston and not being able to, being overqualified for pretty much any position in that level that he's built himself up to, he ended up having to take a job as store manager for Stop and Go, sweeping floors in Stop and Go. And we came here with just the clothes on our backs, and he had one dress shirt that he wore to work every day. He would go home that night and hand wash that shirt. I remember this experience of him, just seeing him wash it in the sink and then iron it, and then going to work the next day with a fresh looking shirt. And that's one of the lessons he taught me, is like, it's okay to be poor, but you don't have to look like you're poor. And that eventually helped me through my life, is some of those key, I guess, core lessons that he taught me, and foundations in life. Like I said, we were rescued by a U.S. Navy destroyer, and that was my first experience with the U.S. military. But as I grew up in the United States, and I learned about history, and I learned about the sacrifices that men and women of our armed forces, Vietnam vets, how they sacrificed so much to fight for our freedoms in Vietnam, that how do you pay that back? And you can't. And I felt, as I grew up, I felt obligated to pay that forward. And the only way to pay that back was to continue to carry that torch, pick up that torch and carry it, and just bring light to the darker places of this world to help others fight for freedom. And I got the opportunity to do that shortly after I enlisted in the United States Army after high school. Within a year or so, we were deployed to Saudi Arabia to kick off Desert Storm when Saddam invaded Kuwait. And to be able to actively be part of a unit that helped liberate Kuwait is something that I'm proud of. After 9/11, I still felt the need to serve again. So I volunteered, I re-enlisted and volunteered to join 20th Special Forces, and then deployed to Afghanistan. And then after Afghanistan, I felt that I still need to do more, and so I volunteered to go back and serve in Iraq as well. So it's just those are the reasons that drove me to join the military, just to help people. I think every Vietnamese person that I talked to really understood the sacrifices that Vietnam vets made for our country. Though the war was not popular in the United States, there are a lot of people who are against the war. I would say most definitely the Vietnamese people are in a debt that we cannot pay for our Vietnam vets to come over, leave their lives here in the United States, and come across the other side of the world to help fight for our freedoms. We hold Vietnam vets in very, very high regard. And like I said, that's one of the reasons why I decided to serve. To give back, also to help other people in this world. I got the chance to do that in Operation Desert Storm, and liberated people of Kuwait. And when we were at war, we don't really know the impact that we made. I mean, we know we won the battles, and we know that we drove out the forces that occupied that country, but you really don't know. And later on, just recently, a couple years ago at business school, I met a group of Kuwaitis that found out that I served in Desert Storm, and they just surrounded me and just said that I was a teenager at that time, and my family had to escape Kuwait, and my father would have been executed, our family would have been, a lot of bad things would have happened, and just showing so much appreciation for what we did. And it kind of took me away, kind of blew me away, because I really didn't know the impact that we made during that war. And those, I don't know, the Vietnam vets who served in Vietnam knew exactly the impact that they made for the people of Vietnam. I know it was a bad time in our country and a bad part of our history how we treated our Vietnam vets. But I will say most definitely that because of Vietnam vets, millions of Vietnamese are alive and they're here in the United States and they're doing well, and that's all because of the sacrifices that Vietnam vets made for us. You know, you hear about people saying America is the best place in the world, and coming from being a refugee and coming here and then serving in the military and having an opportunity to see so many different other countries, you realize that is the truth. I mean, the one thing I would say about America is truly is the land of opportunity. I mean, where else can you come with just the clothes on your back, end up having your college paid for because you joined the military? I mean, there's opportunities like that people can grasp on and take, and that's very few countries have that available. You know, later on, I built my career and then got a chance to go to Harvard Business School and graduate, and I, you know, did that not in for one generation, but in the same lifetime. And I really don't think that any other country would offer that kind of opportunity for anyone. It's here as long as you want it and you're willing to do what it takes to get it. It's there.